Good evening, family. Welcome to another rendition of Frontline News, brought to you by, of course, People Empowered by the Struggle, a 501c3 nonprofit. Bear with me, family, as we get started. We have a crazy show for you this evening. And I want y'all to share this. I want y'all to tell people about this. I'm hoping that this episode goes viral. I'm hoping that Donnie finds a way to really help push this episode out to the masses, because we have a show that probably has never been done in this city. And I'm waiting on our co-host, and I'm waiting on our guest to come on. So we have a historian, someone that is truly knowledgeable about the founding of Maryland, and the founding of Baltimore. And she knows everything about Baltimore and the founders and the whole colonization and the whole Catholic Church and the Jesuits and the Jewish community. And this is going to be an extremely exciting show. But first, before we get started, I'm going to bring up our co-host for this evening. Family, I am so excited. This beautiful revolutionary queen right here made her announcement on Friday, family, for mayor of Baltimore City, the Peopletician. She is going to transform government as we know. She's going to bring government to the people. She's going to bring City Hall back to the people. So I'm just so excited to introduce this amazing woman, this amazing mother, this amazing queen, this amazing person of the people. Family, just welcome Yolanda Pulley. Yeah, you know how to do it. You know how to give you the little claps there, you know. So
wow.
So
wow.
How are you doing, my queen? I know you are excited. You are ready to hit the ground. You are ready to truly transform this city, and just bring back the wellness, bring back the greatness of this city.
Most importantly, Jason, I want to bring back dignity and respect. We got to have dignity and respect in our communities, in our And now we're like this lady just steal something. I don't like the way she running. Like,
Out in the streets. So
yeah,
as always, family, she is out and about helping families.
you know, I get distracted when I see people running. Like, what they running for?
So, Yolanda, we have an amazing show tonight because one of the things that with your platform that people are going to hear more and more about is going to be the word reparations. And really to try to understand the history of reparations. I keep saying that Black, Brown, and Indigenous people, technically anybody that wasn't, and we're going to find this out, that technically wasn't a part of the Trinity, that wasn't a part of the Catholicism, that wasn't part of the Jesuits, and then many of the other religions that came into the city afterwards, after the settling of the Jesuits and the whole, Christian church. Um, we're going to find that technically most folks didn't have an opportunity, even in some cases, poor white folks that didn't necessarily believe in the church, wasn't into Christianity. They were just into survival mode, trying to take care of their families. Really didn't have an opportunity in this city, and there's a reason why. That the way that this city that we call Baltimore, this great city that we call Baltimore, it really has to go. It really is about the foundation that was planted, and those who were in charge of colonizing and forging what we see today as Baltimore, and in some cases, many of their extremists, religious set, stank, is still here to this day. Um, and we see that in many cases, that they are still perpetuating crimes, even in this particular day and age. So we're going to dig down into the crust of things. We're going to go down into the rabbit hole. And I want everybody to just give a warm welcome to a great historian. And she's definitely going to bring some just strong information as to the founding of this city. We know her as what, Choo Choo. She likes to. We know her as Choo Choo. But
just keep it at Choo Choo.
Keep it at Choo Choo. I'm gonna call her Sister Mary because she's our sister in the struggle of knowledge and understanding. So, Choo Choo, are you there with us?
I am. How are you today?
I'm truly excited because first of all, I love history, I love knowledge, and just to hear you talk, I could sit there and listen to you all day. Give me give me some warm milk and cookies, and tell me some
I
more
don't know
stories.
about no milk. I don't know about no milk, but you can definitely hit me up with some chocolate chip cookies and a Pepsi.
Let's start it at just random current coincidence.
Right.
Okay. We have up on the battle monument in the center of Baltimore. Everybody's seen it sitting there between the courthouses. No one's ever looked at it. At the top of it, there's a name at the top, James Lowry Donaldson. And that's up there because of a battle that happened at Fort McHenry. And now it's 2023. And we have Mr. McHenry, who is the Speaker of the House, who kicked out our very own Baltimore favorite lady, Nancy Pelosi, from her secret office in the Congressional House. And, we got not a James, but we got a Jimmy Donaldson. And everybody's kids know him and love him as Mr. Beast. So everything that happened in 1864 here, the same names, all over again. Just it's 2023, and now we got a Mr. McHenry in D.C. and Mr. Beast in North Carolina.
I'm in the process of right now sharing it because as you talk about these certain landmarks, I'm going to do my best, family, to try to bring these things up as fast as I can. So tell me, this is the statue that you're talking about. Can you?
Yep, that's Lady Baltimore.
Yep. So we're going to go through a lot of history. I'm telling you, you're going to want to share this show with so many folks. I'm telling you that this is going to be an exciting.
You can look at her. You can look at that right there, and you can give them the history of, I guess you can call it the controlling sect of the world. Okay. At the bottom is an Egyptian temple, an empty Egyptian tomb. In the center is a Roman fasces. Up on top is a Greek goddess holding a victory laurel. Every place they've been, they've conquered. And that
Mm,
right there is our battle monument, meaning we are no different. They
mm,
came, they saw, they conquered,
mm. Let's
and
take
enslaved us all.
let's take this to the beginning. Let's start from the founding. A lot of folks don't know what the Ark and the Dove is. And can you explain that to us, what the Ark and the Dove and those folks that were in the Ark and the Dove, who they were?
The Ark and the Dove are two ships that set sail to create a new world. And they set sail on Friday, November 22nd, 1633. For us people today, November 22nd, especially Friday, November 22nd, is well known for the assassination of President John F. Kennedy.
Mm,
And on that boat, they said the king was sending somebody to scope out some land, but the Jesuits, the Vatican had already predetermined that he was going to have a Jesuit assigned to him. And that Jesuit's name was Father Andrew White. And that's why I sort of get offended when people say white people, because I'm definitely not a white people. I don't conform to the white people belief, because that's the Andrew White belief that came over, and they started Maryland as a Jesuit slave province. So, enslaving the body, mind, and spirit of people has been the mission, as they call it. My personal life, I have a soul's purpose. My soul has a purpose for being on this earth, and I do not feel that we are supposed to be following a mission that was created by some man.
correct, correct. So I shared the picture of what was, drawn in reference to the Ark and the Dove. Now, to me, they were radical Christians, correct? They if you didn't believe in the Trinity, you couldn't be around these folks, correct?
Well, when Lord Baltimore came, he was not. He was a subject of the king.
Okay. Okay.
But the people of Virginia did not like the fact that the Jesuits came with him.
Okay. Okay.
So that's why their government was taken out during the Civil War, and thus be it's a tyrant is on their flag to this day, because the tyrants took over them just like they took over here. I mean, we get up to 1773 with the Jesuits. They've made half of Maryland at that point. And 1773, the order gets suppressed by the people. The people didn't want them here. So in 1776, they're hosting a revolution and saying we all got independence. We all didn't get independence. Mm-hmm. We all weren't suppressed from our country. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A certain type of somebody was suppressed from the country, not everybody. And that's where I find the difference between there's a U.S. citizen, which is, there was the Articles of Confederation that were discussed long before the Constitution was written. And they were written 1781. And at the time, our Maryland representatives went to sign the Constitution. Luther Martin and George Mason said that they weren't signing the Constitution because it was violating our state rights. So the Constitution basically blurred the lines of us having state ownership or being federalized.
Right. Now I'm sharing a photo of Martin Luther so folks know, and we had this conversation off air. I was talking about how basically everybody wants to make it a fight over enslavement, but a lot of this was not a fight over enslavement. This was about independence of states, correct?
Yes. Right. Forced federalization. It was about forcing federalization on us.
Right. So
making us one nation under their God.
Correct. And you said the story of how when Confederates were captured, that they would force them to pledge allegiance.
Take the Pledge of Allegiance.
Right. That was the kissing of the ring,
yeah,
so to speak. Right.
I call covering your heart being heartless. They're covering your heart. They don't want you to care. cover it up.
Wow. See, this is deep, family. I'm telling you, like, this is, to think about it in that aspect. And again, we were taught in school, to place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag. And you're saying that technically that this is a Jesuit ceremony, correct?
Well, the people that won the war, they call themselves Jews.
Okay.
I was raised in Southeast Baltimore. I was born in 1970. My life here was invented with Earth Day and the National Academy of Medicine. We were all three born in the same year. And the neighborhood that I was in, there was a Hebrew cemetery down the street, but there wasn't a Jewish cemetery. When I went to church, when I went to Sunday school with my mom, they taught me, this Jesus guy was a poor Hebrew carpenter who was killed for, going around spreading the truth. But by the time my kids come up, he's the king of Jerusalem. And, I thought Rockefeller was the king of Jerusalem. That's who I saw put all the money in there. But no, now Jesus is the king of Jerusalem.
Right.
But I just heard another person's changing him to be, a Buddha. So I guess the next generation's going to get him as Buddha.
Right. And I guess it's whatever the interpretation of what folks want to make him to be.
I have a copy of a Bible from 1767. It was printed for a Reverend Alexander Donaldson. Mm-hmm. And that says the new history of the Old and New Testament. And when I saw new history put together, that's a contradiction in two words, because you can't have a new history. Mm-hmm. History is history, and you can make it new if you want. Mm-hmm. But the history's always been there, cleaning up the mess. Now that's what we got to do.
They say that Francis Scott Key, when he wrote the Star Spangled Banner, that he technically had a Bible in his hand.
Do you know who he is?
No. Explain who Francis Scott Key is.
He is the vice president of the Baltimore Bible Society.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So he was another, and again, I keep trying to say this to folks, that technically a lot of these folks were, to me, religious extremists. Matter of fact, digging into the history, again, for the longest, if you didn't believe in the Trinity, you couldn't really practice your worship. They actually had to, in Annapolis, where they set up, the first state house, they actually had to write a law to allow the Protestants and other groups to come in and practice if you didn't believe in their religious belief, which was more.
So did we. The Jews got religious freedom in 1826.
Right.
It's the Maryland Jew Bill, but in there it says that that's a sect of people proclaiming themselves to be Jewish. So today, them's what we would call Zionist.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, so let's stay in that era really quick. So you said that one of these folks was one of the founding priests, and his name was again?
What was that?
You said that in the original colonization, you said that there was a founding priest that was associated with all of this. What was that priest's name? Father
Copley or Father Andrew White? Father Andrew White is the big one. I mean, that's how we got the White House.
Okay. And you said that he is actually in the Vatican.
No. I grew up in Hollandtown. So, Hollandtown didn't exist until after the Civil War.
Okay.
At the time of the Civil War, up on the high hill in Hollandtown, they built a fort called Fort Marshall. Okay. And Fort Marshall is where they fought the war at. After the war, they tear down the fort, and all the wood from the fort gets used to build the first school buildings in Southeast Baltimore. And then they built a church there called, I don't want to lie, but I think it's called Sacred Hearts. And the person who founded that religion is under glass at the Vatican.
Okay, that's the one that's okay. So I'm mixing up stories.
Conklin and Fleet Street.
And what did you say the name of the church was? Sacred Heart?
I want to say it's Sacred Heart.
Okay. And so I'm actually showing a picture right now um, of what would be Fort Marshall in Baltimore.
I got a funny story while you got that up.
Okay, okay.
There was ships right down there at the top of the photo. That's the Canton waterfront where you see the water. And on the left hand side, that's actually little boats. So there's little boats. They're going to do a celebratory celebration down at Fort McHenry. So they got to float past Fort Marshall, and Fort Marshall is going to fire a cannon so that you know that it's recognized. Well, they fired the cannon and they hit the commanding officer on the ship that was supposed to be going Fort McHenry.
Wow. So I have another slide I'm going to start sharing. So this is the Sacred Heart Church. This still in existence today in Baltimore, correct? This is the Church of Sacred Heart.
Yes.
Well, hold on, it didn't show up yet. I'm sorry. It should show up now. Okay, this is the Church Sacred Heart. Most folks can see
Yes,
that.
that's it.
Okay, and that's still in existence today.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what's interesting is that a lot of folks don't understand how instrumental Baltimore was to the development of the church, of the Christian church. Tell folks about the four corner churches, and how that became to be out of Baltimore.
Well, the churches didn't originally start as what we know them of today. You know, you used to go to church to heal. That's what people used to say. You went to church to heal. My grandma used to say organs healed the organs. So vibration of whatever they played in the church was sent around the building and it healed you on the inside. Vibrational healing, natural healing. But that all changed in the 1880s and they started building, you know, a church on every corner. You know, the Methodists needed one, the Baptists needed one. And churches split in the 1880s. Not even the churches themselves, including the Catholics, agreed on what they were talking about. You know, even the Catholics split in two. They're called the Old Catholic Church and the New Catholic Church. So that was double the amount of churches. And then churches became more man-centered. You know, it's really like an ancient Canaanite belief because, you know, this is why they keep going to Israel and the Middle East. These are Canaanites. You know, not all of us been Canaanites. And that's how all these churches began.
And so and that was forged here, correct? And mainly
yes, many of them. That guy, like I said, that guy that created that form of the religion they teach, he's under glass in Rome. I mean, they worship these people.
And then I found, looking at the history, that you had, you know, the Church of Boston, you know, the church of many other colonized cities came out of here.
Yeah, I mean, to manipulate your mind is one of the ways they enslave you. Yeah, I mean, first they got to make you believe it, you know, but just believe. Don't question it. Just believe it. Trust and believe. As long as you trust and believe, you'll never question any other aspect of your life, you know. Why are you paying some man to tell you about God? You know, why did it say thy God before it said the God? You know, thy God is my God. Thy Father God, that would be my Father God. And I know I sort of look like him, so I am made in his own image. You know, to learn about the God of my father would be my grandfather so that I would know what went on in history so they couldn't do it to me again. And that's why they screw up things every 2 generations. Because they never want you to know about what happened before so they can repeat it again.
And they say when you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat your history.
Yes.
The other thing I wanted to get into, and I know that you to me, you know, you are a sister from another mother. You know, we have the saying, you know, a brother from another mother, but you are a sister from another mother. I look at you. We had a great interview one time on radio with Dr. Jane Elliott, who didn't believe in color lines, believed that we were all, you know, cousins, you know, because we all are connected through our mitochondrial DNA. And I know that for you, you don't look at things on color lines, which I think is just so much of a refreshing spirit of you. But one of the things that we do have to identify is that there were things that came along that in some cases were separated by communities because of color. And there are things that we adopted into because of color. And where I'm getting at and where I'm going is that before these Jesuits and these religions, Black people didn't celebrate or practice or partake in anything that was of Christianity or anything of the Trinity and things like that. You tell a
None
story,
of us did.
right,
None of us did.
right. But you tell of a story of how Blacks in this country kind of came into Christianity or came into
Oh,
religion.
yeah, they gave white people and, the native people, because that's who they were corrupting at first,
Correct,
You followed or they killed you. That was just the way of the world.
correct,
That was in 1633.
right. And that's the
So
same.
when,
That's the
huh?
same thing that's the same thing that they did. So I'm Puerto Rican and Trinidadian. So in Puerto Rico they tell the story of how when Christopher Columbus and them came, the first trip when they came through the Costa Rican area, they didn't bring the priest, but the second trip that they came through, they brought the priest, and the priest closed the natives,
Yeah,
and converted them into Catholicism. They
made them
converted.
white men.
Correct. And many of them, of course, resisted. So, of course, a lot of the Tainos ended up being slaughtered. They even tell of a tale of the Spaniards, in that two-line formation with their weapons, just slaughtering Tainos because the Tainos didn't want to partake in what was going on. They didn't want to convert. They didn't want to be a part of Christianity. But you talk about the same thing that happened here. The natives here, the indigenous people here, especially in this region that's considered to be Baltimore, the Susquehannans and all these other different tribes that were here, or indigenous people that were here. You tell the same story of how there was a conversion. There was a conversion into Christianity, or you could face death in some cases. Correct?
Yeah, they conform or die. I mean, that was the way of the world.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the first white man, and that's the way it's written in the Baltimore County history book. So this ain't me being hateful. It says the first white man's name was Nathaniel Uty, and he kicked Dutch people out. And I just questioned, well, if he's the first white man, were the Dutch people black? Because there were black Dutch people. They never say that. They just call them Dutch people, and everybody goes, oh, Dutch wooden shoes must be white people. No, they really weren't. The Black Dutch were a real thing back in the day, even if they don't want to tell us.
Right.
But that's where Aberdeen Proving Ground is.
Right.
But to say racism has died, racism has never died.
Mm.
I grew up in a neighborhood that had not been blockbusted by Thomas D'Alessandro yet. My parents moved in 1970, and because they weren't Roman Catholics, it was like the pre-blockbusting, because the black lady didn't come until the 80s. So they pre-blockbusted with my family. I was called heretic my whole life. I thought it was like a term of endearment for a long time. But those people were racist. No black people were allowed on our street. No, not a lot of black people were on Eastern Avenue back in the day. I don't think I remember seeing any. I didn't have a black kid in my class until junior high school.
What
that's
year? What year is that? You would say what?
I started school in 75 at 215, which was an open concept learning plan. That was their new thing. I was thrown into the open concept learning.
And that's after desegregation, correct? That's after desegregation had taken place. And
yeah, but you got to remember, people in my neighborhood were like the contractors that got paid off on all those dirty contracts with Thomas D'Alessandro,
right?
Barbara Mikulski, Mimi DePietro. They didn't want no mixed neighborhood.
Right. You named some folks. And it's funny because there are folks like Donnie Glover, who is the founder of our platform. He knows these folks. He knows the history of these folks. He knows a lot of these folks were in political power. A lot of these folks control the political structure in
Yeah.
Baltimore
And
City.
well,
And,
the
and now,
neighborhoods that did get blockbusted, like Edmondson Village,
mhm,
when they blockbusted Edmondson Village,
mhm.
you know, that was Thomas Delisantro that was doing that blockbusting. So if he was the mayor, he was getting kickbacks from
Of
the
course,
people that built the houses out here.
of course. Let's
Because
talk
I
about
live in a Delisantro neighborhood.
right,
And I see that I'm at the end of the real first time home buyers, the racist people that ran from Baltimore City and bought a house out here.
correct,
They're getting ready, they're getting older now. So
right,
what did they do? They opened up Section 8. And my entire community is full of people from Edmonton Village.
right,
So
right.
the racists that ran from Baltimore City, now they got karma in old age because they're in a mixed neighborhood now, and you're too old to escape.
Correct, correct,
So,
correct, 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 correct. It's interesting. Let's talk about blockbusting because again, you actually experienced it, and again, we're talking about to us a historical neighborhood, Emerson Village, which is totally
yes,
transformed now, but it was transformed through blockbusting. Correct.
yes.
Let's talk
It,
about that. About what the blockbusting, what the methods of blockbusting was in these communities.
the first method was a city solicitor, not a property agent, a city solicitor would see an old white lady out scrubbing her steps. This would be after they set up a black family. Hey, buy this house. It's really cheap. We'll let you move into it. They
Hmm.
always set one person up.
Hmm.
So then this solicitor would walk over to an old white lady scrubbing her steps and say, hey, ma'am, see that black family over there? That man's going to rape your daughter. He's going to murder your sons. But I'll give you this 1 day offer to go out to the county to a new neighborhood right now if you want to sign this. And that's how I got my neighbors.
Oh,
That, some of my old neighbors, that's how they got out here.
wow.
And I can tell you from knowing some of those people, they made racist kids who
Yeah,
then in turn made racist grandkids. I
yeah,
have a grandkid. If
yeah.
you ask my grandkid what color his friend is, he's going to tell you brown. If you
Right.
ask him what color he is, he's going to tell you tan because he ain't white enough to be no white kid. And he doesn't ever know what a black person was. I had to explain
Right,
that to him because he heard it on the television. His whole life he thought his friend was a brown guy.
right, right, right. And that's just like folks don't realize the history. I have a good friend, Antonio Piatella. He was the Cold War correspondent for the Baltimore Sun, and him coming from over in Europe in a country, where everybody is the same, everybody's taking care of each other. When he came here in Baltimore and saw this heavily segregated, separated, red line, communities, it was shocking to him because he had never seen anything like this before. And their concept over in Europe, in reference to what America was about, was America was supposed to be this, land of the home. I mean, the land of the free, the home of the brave, and everything was supposed to be kumbaya. But technically, when he got here, he realized that there were a lot of these great American cities that are separated on color lines, not even racial lines, because again, there's only one race, it's the human race.
Yes.
But we're separated by these color lines. And for him, it was disturbing because, growing up as a child, growing up to go to school and then become a journalist, he never faced those type of that deep segregation that he saw. So when he came here, it was troublesome to him to the point where when he retired from the Baltimore Sun, he decided to dig deeper and look at the investigation, of how this great American city was created. And his title is "Not in My Neighborhood: How Bigotry Created a Great American City," and
Yeah.
he really dug into the crust of why Baltimore was the way that it was. And one of the things that we keep talking about, because we're talking about reparations and we're talking about restoration, and we're talking about doing things, especially in the realm of housing. And you just talked about blockbusting, but another thing that I know that you have knowledge of and experience of is the City Council Act of 1911, to where they actually introduced a bill that said that if you had a neighborhood that was concentrated with one race, that you couldn't have another race come into that neighborhood. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Well, everything was segregated for a while. I mean, people lived together as family groups. I mean, even up into the 70s and 80s in the city, you still had your family around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 6 blocks away. I could walk 6 blocks, walk past 2 of my aunts and my grandmother and my mother's best friend.
Mm.
You know, the person that lived next door to me, she had 2 of her aunts that lived on the street out back. I mean, your family was around you. So that was your bond to the neighborhood. You know, when things start bulling up, most of the times it was really a bloodline feud because somebody went against somebody's blood. And that just was never good from any Baltimore standpoint. And I mean, that I'm not saying that what the Roman Catholic Church has done with giving immigrants free IDs on Baltimore Street is helping our crime rate any, but you know, at some point they have to look at retaliatory acts. And you know, I've always recommended a mediation team, but you know, nobody in law wants to mediate anything. They just want to punish you for breaking the law.
So we know that, again, there was these housing policies, especially in 1911, for almost 7 to 8 years. You could not move into another neighborhood that was concentrated by one particular racial group. Now, eventually that was pushed out. But of course, then a lot of these neighborhoods created covenances that said that you can't take my house and sell it to another race. And in some cases, they even discriminated based on religion. So they knew, you know, Jewish folks were coming into certain neighborhoods, and those Jesuits, those, you know, Irish and Greek, and you know, and those who are descendants of English, of the English, they didn't want particular other racial groups or even religious groups in their communities. So they would create these covenances. And then you have the 1930s where FDR created the federal insured mortgage policy, where then they started discriminating again by saying that, you know, if your neighborhood, you know, that you have to protect and keep the equity, you know, keep building the properties have to keep vesting and keep increasing in their property value. And mortgage companies and of course communities that were already deeply segregated figured, well, if we let Black people or we let Jewish people or we let any other folks into our community, that in some cases, you know, that they're going to bring down the property value, they're going to change the dynamics of the community. So then they weren't able to get these federally insured mortgages. And the one thing that I keep trying to explain to folks is that during the 1930s, you had more wealth generation in many different ways. And I'm going to explain it. You had more wealth generation in the white community, mostly, again, Catholic community, mostly those that were into Catholicism.
If you were associated with an organization or an association that was controlled by the sect, you were entitled to better employment.
Correct.
That's no different today.
Correct. And the housing policy, again, at the time, when so most of those folks in the 1930s, I keep saying, they were mostly blue collar workers. They, you know, they worked in the factories, they worked in the steel mills. You know, there was a war machine of World War I. So you have, you know, industry, you have great jobs at the time. And but again, to better yourself, you would want to educate your children. So those folks that were able to take advantage in those communities like Hamden, Roland Park, places like that at the time had the ability to take the equity out of their homes and send their children to great institutions and universities.
Well, I went to the first high school in Baltimore City, but Southeast Baltimore City. Hampstead was built as the first high school. And it was a fabulous school. When I went there, you still learn typesetting because, we had the Sun paper doing the hand set types, We learned printing because the Baltimore Sun was a viable employment source. We had a woodworking class because we still had carpentry services around here. We had tech in our schools. The old Patterson High School they just tore down had a complete automotive wing. These kids used to work on the teachers' cars during the day. They were fully trained mechanics when they walked out of school. They didn't need to pay for a tech school after the fact.
Wow.
They had that in high school.
Wow.
But now we got computers. These kids don't have to go look up an index card at the library. Your information's at your fingertips, but yet you're learning less in school.
Right. And how could that possibly be with access to so much information right within your fingertips? I mean, you can learn just like when you started, giving me information, me and Yolanda started searching the world in reference to understanding where these English came from. We learned about
well, the English packed up and left.
Correct.
The English people, they packed up and left in the 1860s. They said we had enough of this, and then the Gilded Age started. And if you've never watched the show The Gilded Age, watch it.
Yeah.
Because it gives you a sense that when these people came here, nobody wanted them here. They had to build their own communities because they weren't even wanted in the neighborhoods they moved into. And I find it funny because those houses today are being sold to us as houses with summer kitchens. That ain't a summer kitchen. That house was built for a kosher family, and it has 2 kitchens because they can't have milk and meat in the same place.
Correct.
So they had 2 kitchens.
Correct.
So yeah, we're gullible enough to say, "Oh, that's a summer kitchen because it's cooler upstairs during the summer." No, it ain't.
Right. Wow. I have a question for you. Speaking of traveling back and forth across the waters, the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty, if anybody ever looked at the Statue of Liberty, Jace, can you pull up the Statue of Liberty real quick?
Sure. Go ahead.
Nobody ever noticed that the Statue of Liberty she still has shackles on her feet.
Yeah.
What is that about?
I don't know. She's in New York. I never looked.
Yeah, so when if you look at the Statue,
I never even paid attention to her. I've never been up there to see her.
Nobody ever paid attention to it until somebody brought it to my attention that the Statue of Liberty when they put her up and made her sing like she was this gracious white woman that, the liberty.
Well, there's a story behind that. There's a story behind that. And I know some of the story. So originally, she was supposed to be an African. All right. But I think the mayor at the time and the powers to be at the time in New York didn't want to have an African woman on the harbor being seen every day on the harbor.
But why keep the shackles on her feet?
Because originally this was supposed to be an enslaved or formerly enslaved African.
But if you wanted to show it as something else, why would you keep the shackles? Why would you keep that to let us know that was an enslaved woman?
Hey, Yolanda. They don't ever tell you that Mount Rushmore is a Jewish accomplished monument either. That's American. Remember that.
Wow. Wow. But that right there blew me when somebody pointed that out to me. And I need to find out,
So it's supposed to represent or symbolize liberty, breaking free from bondage. And again, the original concept of the Statue of Liberty was supposed to be of a Black woman, but they wouldn't allow that to happen
originally it wasn't even meant to be here. The person it was supposed to be shipped to didn't want it, and they sent it to us. She's a secondhand merchandise kind of thing.
Wow.
Well, they talking about she was trying to break free. Why is the chain so tight?
Right. And there is an original Black Liberty of statue. The first, I guess, original model of it. So there was an original model according to online. modeled after an enslaved black woman. Um, that was supposed to be, again, what the original concept was, but they wouldn't allow it. So they had to change the head. Everything else about the statue was kind of kept the same, but the rendering of the head had to be changed
Well,
because
they should have changed something about them feet. They big as hell. They huge. That was a huge one there. I mean, I see why if she was enslaved. I see why, because that was a big one there. That was kind of large there. But
right.
I was trying to see what that symbol, that right there.
Right.
When people travel here and talk about the home of the, where does this look like traveling from somewhere else coming here? Talk about you're free.
Again, from what they're saying online, it is supposed to be the representation of you breaking from bondage,
but you don't see those chains broken,
into liberty.
I don't care what they say. I want
you
to
do
know
see
the
a broken
real
link
history.
there. You see it's a broken link there. If
I
you
don't
look
see
at
no
it
broken
closely,
link.
yeah, if you look closely, there is a broken link.
Nah.
I know it stands on a star. That's all I know. It stands on a star for.
Right. If you look at it,
even when we used to go, when we used to visit New York as a child, and we had to go when we went to the Statue of Liberty, and they was telling us all these things about the Statue of Liberty. They never said anything about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's bring this home a little bit to today. We know, again, to me, Baltimore, the state of Maryland, was really built on. I always say, I keep saying this: religious extremists. Would you agree or not agree?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so, bringing it today to home, we still see a lot of the remnants, the residual of these churches still in existence today. I mean, we have the archdiocese. They are descendants of what particular religious group?
Well, they're the Romans.
Okay. And you have.
If you looked at the people that came, they didn't even call themselves religious at first. Mm-hmm. They called themselves Anglo-Saxon. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you look at an old world map, there was only 3 things listed on it. It was Anglo-Saxon and Jutes. Anglos, Saxons, and Jutes. And they claim the Anglo-Saxons are the white people. So if the Jutes are the Jews, all of us are the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because obviously the Jews aren't dark in color. You claim the Anglo-Saxons are white. So you're talking about a particular sect of people, a trifecta of them. Mm-hmm. And the rest of us don't fit into that. Mm-hmm. Unless you paid to fit into that, or oath to fit into that, or give your soul to fit into that. Mm-hmm. Where's honesty, integrity at? People don't have that anymore because, they've given their soul to be dishonest. Mm-hmm. You gave up your integrity for your job. Mm-hmm. I know when the media called me that day and asked me to lie, I didn't do it. I walked in my boss's office and my words were, I do a lot of things for money, but one of them is not lie to the media. She picked up the phone. She lied to them, but it wasn't me.
Mm. Mm. So I have a map, and this is supposed to be an Anglo-Saxon map, and it kind of shows the migration of different folks.
Yes,
throughout
crusading
Europe.
Across the world. Crusading is the key word there.
Correct. And they were notorious. I mean, they, they still say to this day, although we see it in these fantasy movies, with Tom Hanks, and the whole conspiracy of all these caverns, or labyrinths, underneath the Vatican Sea. They were notorious for going through different regions, converting them into Catholicism. The Monty Python makes fun of the whole thing with the Inquisition. You know, they even have a little dance, little song and dance. The Inquisition, what a game. You know, it's like, you know, and it's funny that they make fun of it, but it was notoriously vicious. In many cases, looking at the history of it, the king at the time, it was King George, correct?
Yeah.
With technically was totally against them. Matter of fact, he wanted to be the lead of the church at the time. He wanted he wanted them to look at him as the leader of the church, and not at the time. What was the Pope at the time? His name is escaping me.
Oh, I don't even remember at this moment.
Right. But I know that he wanted to be the head of the church, and when they wouldn't recognize that, that's when he started slaughtering priests and started to expelling, you know, Christians out of England. But at first, they were in favor with Rome. Correct?
Well, I mean, England has flipped back so many times. I look at all the Catholic and Protestant kings and queens they had. I mean, that fully explains that religious is the dividing factor to elimination. You know, every time a Catholic lead came in, they killed the Protestants. The Protestant came in, they killed the Catholics. You know, what I sit back and question. I was born in Baltimore City in 1970. Mm-hmm. Exactly what does someone from 2,000 years ago have any effect on my life right here, right now, today about? And I have people my entire life that haven't cared about not one thing that I learned in Baltimore history. But they're quoting on Facebook and everywhere else how much they have compassion and need to save Israel. Mm-hmm. You don't know, we wouldn't even have Israel if it wasn't for that fort down in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. People don't know. Thomas D'Alessandro is the one that helped them get that boat to go to Palestine in 1947. And they weren't the first load of people that they dumped over in Palestine to take over. Mm-hmm. Just like the Roman Catholic Church giving free IDs today on Baltimore Street. Who are they dumping in our streets to take over? Because if you look at that exodus that Thomas D'Alessandro helped them have to get to Israel, it says the Jewish exodus from the Muslim world. And that's why when they told us to put a mask on 2020, I got on Amazon, I found a burqa, I posted it on Facebook and told people you better pre-order now. Where are we going? To another religion? I mean, you're just pawning us off to the next people. Mm-hmm. You know, the original settlers, that they were the ones that you didn't want. You know, they felt persecuted, so they came here to get away from you. So then, you know, Father Andrew White comes. He brings his book. The Quakers come up to Philadelphia. My mom's like 2 generations from being a Mennonite. At least they knew how to live by themselves. They could grow their own food. They could build their own house, but the government didn't want them. So, you know, they're still trying to eliminate them to this day. But, you know, then the Jews won the war in Baltimore. So why am I fighting over a 2,000-year-old belief? Mm-hmm. You know, I've been non-existent to people my entire life, but somebody from 2,000 years ago I'm supposed to worship and honor, and everybody in the world knows. I wish somebody would donate as much to me as they do to him.
Right. I got a question for you. So how can we start, since we know about all this and how we were redlined and how we were discriminated against? And I'm not just talking about, at this point, I'm not even just talking about Black people. I'm talking about
it's everybody. That's why I don't get even the people going to church. If they opened up a book and asked, where did you get your cross? What exactly was the cross? Because I wondered, if somebody was killing me with something, if I had to carry that thing around, would I want that thing be the thing representing me in my death? Absolutely not. I worked in death care. You know, why do I got crosses all over my cemetery? You know, what's up with that? Wow. So I pulled out my 1885 biblical dictionary, flipped to the word cross. At the time of Jesus Christ, the cross was speared. Nobody wanted that. It was a symbol of death that marked the grave of slaves and murderers. When the Greek Christians from Jerusalem finally took over Constantine to, give him an idea on how to expand his empire, they were like, here, use this cross. It'll help you form a religion. And all of a sudden, the cross is stamped up on every goddamn thing around. Nobody knows what it meant at the time of Christ, but everybody wears it around, representing it as him.
Right. And I found the name.
Start to correct some of the wrongs.
But I don't know how you would, because everybody in the world living backwards now.
And before we get to try to get a solution within the last few minutes, it was Pope Clement that I was trying to get.
Clement. Okay.
Clement, right. And it was Pope Clement. And the theory was that because the king at the time wanted to divorce his wife and marry Mary, that the church was totally against that. But he went against the church anyway and really married this Jezebel, because Mary was a Jezebel. Mary was actually put to death because of her indiscretions. And they said that she lived a very poor health because she may have had, the theory was she may have had some sexually transmitted diseases because she did it to everyone, in the palace, including the king's cousins and everybody else. So she was floozy. And but I bring that up because it was that era that really started the expulsion of Catholics throughout the region, and even in they show them in Norway, Iceland, Greenland, and stuff, where they actually were working against the King of England, creating pamphlets and leaflets and information, and was starting this anti movement against the king because they were again trying to uphold their religious beliefs. And you mentioned that some of them came over when Calvert, Lord Baltimore came over. He grabbed some of them up and brought them over in the process. And it may have been because they were persecuted people, and the king was, going out and trying to kill off these people, But these are the people that you had that came here and eventually settled the lands. And in some cases, that whole Catholic Church that's always been around for many, many, many centuries, even in the Dark Ages, those people are the ones that are still in power in this city to this day. One of the biggest controlling factors of money and the dynamics here in Baltimore is the Catholic Church. They're still in existence. From the 1600s of settling till now, they are still in influence. So how do you remove something like that has had an influence for over 600, 700 years?
They did that in 1773, and it caused a revolution. You do that, it causes wars, which, why are they fighting over in Ukraine? Did Putin try to kick out a Jesuit? They're kicking the Jesuits out of Cuba. You better watch over there, or something might happen in Cuba. Because Cuba's been walking in, kicking their Jesuit priest out. So I think the world's waking up to what's going on. I don't think it's just us sitting in this little room here talking on radio, talking about the way of the world. I think a lot of people are waking up to, we're controlled by somebody.
Right. So do we need a revolution to end this? To end this, because we're running a little over time.
Oh, I've been singing that Beatles song my entire life. Yes.
It's time for a revolution. Yeah. Talking about that song.
Yeah, that one.
Okay. Well, hopefully, we have Yolanda Pulley, who is a revolutionary person for the.
They told me I was one person. I was one person. I can't change the world. I got Yolanda. Yolanda's going to change the world.
Wow. On that note, family, we got to end. And that was amazing to end off with. So, again, thank you. I'm going to call you Queen Mary, if you don't mind. Thank you, Queen Mary, for coming on and just blessing us with so much knowledge. You definitely wear your crown straight, and you definitely stand up tall. And we appreciate you. Family, until the next time. With Frontline News, we're going to do this again. We're going to bring Mary back on again because there's still some other things that we want to dig into this rabbit hole. that is actually part of the founding of Baltimore that we know, and some of the controlling dynamics around the world in
Well,
reference to
actually, I
revenue.
think that if she would accept, we would love to have her on as a co-host if
Yeah,
she would accept it.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
would love to.
Yeah, yeah. And this has been fun, family. Again, we hope that you share this. Put this knowledge is power, but power is nothing if you don't share it. You got to share the knowledge. You got to share the power. So until next time, family, we appreciate y'all. We'll read some of the comments later and stuff. We appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for coming on Frontline News. Again, if you need us, you know where to find us, pebts.org, People Empowered by the Struggle, or pebts.org@gmail.com. Or you can always give our organization a call, 443-355-8014. And again, we need everybody to step up and get ready to put this great leader, Yolanda Pulley, into office so that we can change these dynamics for our community, for all of our community, all of our marginalized communities, whether they're white, black, brown, yellow, whatever have you, so we can change
Even the aliens that they won't tell us about. I represent you too. I represent the aliens that we don't know about.
that are
Love
living
y'all.
among us. That are living among us. Bye, family. Peace.